Observing the lone figure, a young Marine named Davis nudged his companions. "Take a look at that. Lost, do you reckon? Perhaps hunting for her husband's unit." A wave of mirth swept across his small circle. Buoyed by their approval, Davis pushed off his chair and casually sauntered toward the woman's table. He affected a posture he surely intended as nonchalant and winning, leaning against the edge with his arms folded. A patronizing grin spread across his face as he initiated the exchange. "Ma'am," he remarked, "that's quite the formidable jacket you're sporting. Would I be right in thinking you're a devoted follower of naval air power?" The woman, Lauren Taylor, did not rush her response. She deliberately finished the mouthful she was eating, paused to take a careful drink of water, and then finally raised her eyes to his. Her gaze was level and a disconcertingly tranquil blue. "One could make that argument," she replied, her tone measured and low-key. Her complete lack of agitation momentarily threw him off balance. The encounter, however, was fundamentally a show for his peers, who were now fixated on the scene. "Naturally," he continued, recovering quickly. "Around here, we've all got our designated call signs, a customary thing among pilots." He swept a hand towards the aircraft visible through the nearby windows. "I'd wager an impressive jacket like yours is paired with an equally impressive nickname. So what's your moniker? Top Gun's girlfriend?" A wave of sharp laughter broke out among his friends. The jibe achieved exactly the desired effect. A concise, condescending jab intended to brand her as an outsider, a wife, a civilian, anything other than an equal. The corporal anticipated a predictable reaction, a flushed face, a flustered protest, or perhaps a sharp, offended comeback. What transpired was entirely unexpected. With deliberate calm, she lowered her fork onto the tray, fixed him with a direct, unwavering look, and stated her answer devoid of any discernible feeling. "Black Mamba," the single word resonated, hanging heavy in the sudden quiet. Davis's confident smirk evaporated. This was not the kind of reply his routine of casual dominance was designed to handle. It was far too precise, far too assertive. He had thrown out a mock question to an assumed civilian, a purely rhetorical punchline. Yet the response felt less like a joke and more like a safety-off weapon. The brief moment stretched into an unnerving silence, during which the background noise of the mess hall seemed to simply disappear. The young corporal found himself standing still, suddenly trapped in a situation he had entirely misjudged. The moniker Black Mamba caused him to freeze in place. A brief spasm of doubt crossed Davis's features, instantly banished as a surge of overconfidence flooded back. He manufactured a laugh that sounded strained and excessively loud. "Black Mamba, very clever. But let's be serious, ma'am. That's clearly an official issue jacket. Unauthorized wear of military gear on base can land you in serious hot water. That's a breach of the UCMJ." He was now firmly committed to the confrontation, unable to back down while his peers were watching. Lauren, resuming her meal with precise, minimal movements, replied, "I am familiar with the uniform code of military justice, Corporal." "Are you, though?" he challenged, his voice escalating slightly. "Because your name tape reads Taylor. And those squadron patches," he leaned in to scrutinize a patch on her right shoulder, a skull in a pilot's helmet. "That signifies VMFAT 101, the Sharpshooters, a Hornet training squadron, a fleet replacement unit. Are you seriously claiming you're an FA-18 pilot?" His statement was a direct challenge, not an inquiry, but an outright charge of deception. Around them, several older, more experienced Marines began observing the interaction with tired annoyance and knowing cynicism. However, this situation carried an unusual undercurrent. The woman's absolute composure was unsettling. My assignments have included time with the sharpshooters, Lauren responded, her voice betraying nothing, before she calmly took another bite of her food. Davis's frustration mounted. Her unflappable serenity was an impenetrable barrier, and he could feel his perceived authority, the power derived from his uniform and his environment, beginning to erode. Sensing his control, the inherent power of his uniform within this military setting, was rapidly dissolving. He decided he had to forcefully re-establish his dominance. "Fine," he declared, dispensing with any lingering facade of courtesy. "Show me your ID. If you have the clearance to wear that gear, you'll possess a CAC card to prove it." Without uttering a single word, Lauren reached into the cargo pocket of her flight suit. She retrieved her wallet, withdrew her common access card, and extended it toward him. Davis aggressively grabbed the card. He eagerly scanned the laminate, fully anticipating a dependent's card, a civilian contractor badge, or any form of identification that would confirm his public accusations of fraud. What he actually saw made his entire world tilt. The distinctive green stripe marking an active duty officer. He registered the details. Taylor, Lauren E., and most devastatingly, the pay grade and title. 04, Major. A chilling, sinking sensation gripped his gut. This was no minor issue. This was an egregious, potentially career-ending disaster. His pride, however, refused to concede defeat. Handing the card back with an apology in front of his audience was unthinkable. He was desperate for an alternative escape route that wouldn't publicly confirm his foolishness. He pretended to study the CAC card, scrutinizing it with false intensity. "This could be a forgery," he muttered, the accusation sounding weak even to his own ears. "The photograph looks poor quality." "It was issued by the Deer's office in Yuma. Their equipment is notoriously awful," Lauren stated calmly, utterly lacking any defensive edge. "The embedded chip, however, is functional. There is a reader at the Chow Line entrance if you wish to confirm its validity." She had expertly called his bluff. Davis was utterly cornered. Retreating meant total humiliation, while pressing forward meant knowingly stepping into greater danger. He chose the latter. "I have no need for a scanner," he asserted, his voice now sharp and aggressive. He jabbed a finger at another, more intricate patch resting above her heart. "What about this insignia? The Delta Wing and target? That's a WTI patch. Do you understand the significance of that, ma'am? That represents a weapons and tactics instructor. That's the best of the best. You get that at Mao TS1, following 7 weeks of pure torment. It's not simply given, it's paid for in blood." He was practically snarling, his words a furious stream of misdirected self-righteousness. He saw himself as defending the sacred integrity of an institution she was apparently mocking. As his finger made contact with the patch, the mess hall's ambient noise abruptly twisted in Lauren's perception, replaced for a fraction of a second by a different soundscape. The agonizing metallic stress of an FA-18 airframe fighting gravity and physics. The sharp, adrenalized taste in her mouth. Beneath her, the vast, moonless blackness of the desert, suddenly punctuated by the hideous, blossoming light of anti-aircraft fire. The acrid combination of ozone and sweat inside her cockpit, the instrument panel's red glow casting a devilish light on her face. A voice, tight with fear and static, crackled in her ear. "Viper 11, we are under effective fire. Out of flares. We need an immediate exit." It was a vivid, momentary intrusion, a raw memory etched into her subconscious, a phantom residing within the very fabric the corporal now touched with contemptuous disregard. The harrowing mental image dissolved as abruptly as it had materialized, leaving behind only the mundane background noise of the cafeteria. Lauren's focus returned to the young Marine standing before her. His face was blotchy with heightened color, and an aggressive self-importance emanated from him. He was completely unaware of the profound significance the patch held. For him, it was merely an institutional symbol. For her, it represented a deep and painful scar. Across the dining area, Master Gunnery Sergeant Cole, a figure whose face bore the indelible lines of 3 decades of service in the Corps, slowly set down his coffee cup. He had been quietly observing the entire sorry spectacle. Initially, he had dismissed it as typical junior enlisted arrogance needing correction. But the woman's utterly impossible composure and the corporal's recent sneering mention of the WTI patch had suddenly riveted his attention. He leaned in, examining her jacket more closely. The VMFA T101 patch, the WTI patch, and a third, less visible, almost subdued patch indicating a deployment tour. That particular combination of insignia was exceedingly rare, practically unheard of. Then he saw the name tape. Taylor. Cole's blood ran cold. The name, the patches, and the call sign, Black Mamba, that he had overheard the corporal mockingly use. It was no casual joke. It was a legend. A cautionary tale recited to new pilots to instill discipline, and a story he had personally heard from a profoundly shaken reconnaissance team leader who owed his very survival to the pilot who carried that name. Cole did not make a scene, nor did he yell. Instead, he reached into his pocket, calmly retrieved his cell phone, and scrolled to a number he seldom needed to dial. He rose and walked towards the exit, thumbing the call button. The connection was established on the second ring. Colonel Matthews. Sir, Master Gunnery Sergeant Cole, he spoke, his voice low and conveying urgency. Apologies for the interruption, sir, but I believe you need to report to the 22 area mess hall immediately. A pause followed. What is it, Master Guns? The colonel asked, his tone tight with annoyance at being disturbed. Cole took a steadying breath. Sir, I believe Major Taylor is here, the pilot from the Kandahar extraction, the one they call Black Mamba. The silence on the other end was absolute. When Matthews finally responded, all annoyance was gone, replaced by a chilling, stark alarm. I'm on my way. In the wing operations officer's office, Colonel Matthews slammed the receiver back onto its base. He stared blankly ahead for a moment, his mind working furiously. Major Taylor was here. He had sanctioned her brief assignment to Miramar, yet her arrival was premature, and the very first thing she encountered was an aggressive dispute in the base cafeteria. Sergeant, he bellowed at his waiting aide, pull the service jacket for Major Lauren E. Taylor, call sign Black Mamba, and make it instantaneous. Moments later, the personnel file populated the colonel's screen. He leaned forward, intensely absorbing the dense, factual text as if encountering it for the first time. The official record was blunt and unembellished, which amplified its impact. Taylor, Lauren E. Major, USMC, MOS 7523, FA-18 fighter pilot. Total flight hours, 2,847. Combat hours, 6-12. The scrolling accolades were a staggering catalog of bravery. The Air Medal, 3rd Award with Combat V, the Navy and Marine Corps Commendation Medal with Combat E. And then the ultimate distinction, the Distinguished Flying Cross. The citation, while concise, vividly detailed her incredible feat. For exceptional heroism and aerial accomplishment. Despite her aircraft suffering catastrophic enemy ground fire damage, Major Taylor utilized flawless airmanship and tenacity to successfully pilot her disabled FA-18 Hornet over 80 hostile nautical miles back to safety, thereby securing a critical military asset and her own life. Her assignments were a roster of Marine aviation's most challenging roles: fleet duty, forward air controller, and weapons and tactics instructor at MATS-1. The file confirmed her combat nickname, the one earned in the furnace of war: Black Mamba. A potent, chilling rage gripped Matthews. One of the most decorated combat aviators currently serving was being harassed by an insignificant corporal in his own building. He snatched his military cover from his desk. "Get the wing commander on the line," he snapped at his assistant while heading for the door. "Tell him we have a code red at the 22 area mess. Not a threat to security, but a threat to respect and discipline. And summon the base sergeant major. I want him meeting me there 5 minutes ago." Inside the chow hall, Corporal Davis was basking in the heady thrill of commanding an audience. He was holding her ID, he had publicly questioned her legitimacy, and her only defense had been calm, minimal responses. In his self-congratulatory view, he was victorious, interpreting her composed silence as a quiet acceptance of his accusation that she was a fraud. He resolved to terminate the confrontation, delivering what he saw as the knockout blow. "I've seen plenty, ma'am. That's enough," he announced, arbitrarily slipping her KC card into his pocket, treating it as evidence. "I refuse to believe your story. That jacket, those insignias, it's stolen valor. You are coming with me right now to the Provost Marshal's office. Faking a federal ID, impersonating an officer, you are facing very serious consequences." He motioned to his two friends, who, caught up in the high drama, immediately rose and positioned themselves on either side of the table, physically obstructing Lauren's exit. The exchange had instantly escalated from a heated debate to a physical confinement. A gasp ran through the room. A boundary had been crossed. The atmosphere became electrically tense. Lauren Taylor merely regarded the three young Marines blocking her path, her expression entirely impassive, before slowly settling her napkin on her plate. The instant Davis parted his lips to issue his next instruction, the main entrance doors of the mess hall were thrust open with such violence they slammed against the wall. Stops. The natural drone of the room's conversation was immediately silenced, as if a master switch had been thrown. Silhouetted in the doorway stood Colonel Matthews, his expression dark and menacing. Alongside him was the immense 6'4" presence of the base Sergeant Major, his uniform decorated with a lifetime of service ribbons. Trailing them by a single step was a Brigadier General, the wing commander himself, an authority figure whose appearance on the main floor of a military cafeteria was legendary in its rarity. Flanking the group were the Master Gunnery Sergeant, who had placed the call, and a sharp lieutenant colonel from the general staff. The 5 high-ranking individuals advanced as a unified, intimidating front, their boots resounding sharply on the linoleum. They ignored the rest of the occupants, their stares locked solely on one objective: the isolated table near the window. A crushing silence descended, heavy with the full import of the general's indictment. Davis was visibly shaking, his face the color of concrete. He looked upon the woman he had just accused of egregious fraud, finally seeing past his own biases. He recognized the quiet authority he had dismissed as frailty, and the unflappable composure he had misinterpreted as yielding. The base Sergeant Major moved forward until his presence completely eclipsed the young corporal. He spoke without raising his voice, a controlled whisper far more terrifying than any shout. "You are an absolute disgrace, Corporal, not merely to your rank, but to the very eagle, globe, and anchor you wear. You failed to recognize a Marine officer. Instead, you saw a woman and acted based on prejudiced assumptions. You failed the fundamental prerequisite of leadership, to perceive reality, not prejudice." He leaned in further. You will immediately return Major Taylor's identification card. You will issue an apology. Following this, you and I will have a thorough, protracted discussion concerning your continued service in my Marine Corps." Shaking uncontrollably, Davis retrieved the KAC card from his pocket. He held it out to Lauren, utterly incapable of meeting her gaze. "Ma'am, Major, I truly apologize." The colonel addressed Lauren. "Major, this conduct is completely indefensible. Should you elect to pursue charges under Article 134 for public disrespect, you will receive my complete and unwavering endorsement." All eyes fixed on Lauren. She accepted the ID from the corporal's trembling hand. She looked at his terror and the profound humiliation on the faces of his cohorts. Then, she turned toward the colonel. "That will not be necessary, sir," she stated, her voice finally commanding the hall's attention. She redirected her gaze to the young Marine. "The established standard exists for a critical reason. It protects everyone. Never compromise that standard for anyone," she articulated, her tone firm yet devoid of malice. "But crucially, never apply that standard selectively based on a superficial judgment. Look at the uniform, read the rank, respect the person. That is the entirety of it." Her words demonstrated true leadership, beyond rank or combat skill. She was a master of measured grace. As she spoke of fairness and standards, one final image flickered across her memory, not of the fight itself, but the resulting scene. The fuel-stained tarmac of a forward base. The scream of her damaged engine winding down. The elderly master sergeant, her ground chief, staring up at the shredded tail of her Hornet. Then at her, his eyes wide with a combination of terror and respect. He had simply approached her cockpit, looked her in the eye, and said, "Ma'am, you possess the luck of the devil and the lethal focus of a snake. A black Mamba." The name, she realized, symbolized survival and the deadly calm of utmost professional respect, forged in the crucible of war. In the ensuing weeks, the story of the confrontation in the 22 area mess hall transitioned into Miramar legend. A stark, cautionary tale circulated in barracks and flight rooms. Corporal Davis retained his service, though his career trajectory became significantly more challenging. He and his friends became permanent fixtures in base-wide professional conduct training sessions, classes that the base Sergeant Major personally revitalized. The incident also forced a complete revision of the base's protocol for challenging IDs, placing new emphasis on professional respect and de-escalation. Approximately 1 month later, Lauren exited the post exchange carrying a bag of groceries. A hesitant voice addressed her as she reached her car. "Major Taylor?" She turned to see Corporal Davis, alone and wearing civilian clothing. He stood rigidly, a subdued posture of attention. "Corporal?" she acknowledged neutrally. He swallowed hard, unable to look her in the eye. "Ma'am, I felt compelled to genuinely apologize this time, not under duress." He finally met her gaze. "My actions were completely indefensible. I've done my research. I read the full DFC citation and some of the after-action reports from your deployments." A look of profound shame crossed his face. "I was totally ignorant. I'm sorry." Lauren assessed him. He was not the same swaggering youth. The incident had clearly been a profoundly humbling, maturing experience. She detected the nascent stirrings of wisdom in his eyes. "What is your MOS, Corporal?" she asked, her voice softening slightly. "Ma'am, infantry rifleman, recently assigned to base security." She nodded. "A demanding role, the very backbone of our corps. I trust you uphold high standards there." "Yes, ma'am. I am making every effort." "Good," she said. She gave him a minute, almost invisible smile. "Take this as a lesson, Corporal. Don't let it define you negatively, but never, ever forget it. The greatest Marines are those intelligent enough to learn when they are proven wrong. Now, carry on." He looked stunned by the absence of spite and the unexpected offer of mentorship. "Aye, ma'am," he stammered, then gave a slight nod of respect before walking away, his shoulders fractionally straighter than before. Lauren watched him go, then got into her car. The sun was setting over the flight line, and there was a new training syllabus waiting to be written. The work, as always, continued. Thank you for watching. The stories of women who serve are an essential part of our shared military heritage. To honor their valor and hear more stories like this, please like, share, and subscribe to She Chose Fortitude. Your support helps us ensure these incredible legacies are never forgotten.